These are as advertised, just like the footage on the website. And now we're gonna talk about the elephant in the room. One that I don't like so much is, now we're not gonna have all successes. Here comes the first flop. Over the winter, I shared with you all of the seeds that I plan to grow this year. It is now August, so we're gonna go through and see how they did. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to our garden. We're gonna start here in this bed that I have right outside our raised bed garden with some foxgloves. Now, for several years, I've been growing the Dalmatian peach foxgloves, and they are a gorgeous light apricot color. And they are a first year blooming foxglove. Now, if you've ever grown foxgloves before, they're a biennial typically, which means that in the first year that you grow them, you get foliage and root development. And in year 2, you'll get those beautiful tall bloom stalks. Well, there are a couple of varieties that will bloom on year 1. Dalmatian peach is one of them, and a new to me variety this year is the Camelot lavender. Now, they are just past their prime here in my garden bed, but I did take footage of them a couple of weeks ago when they were looking gorgeous. And they both are a pretty decent size. I would say that the Dalmatian peach is slightly shorter, topping out at about 24 to 30 inches, where the lavender, Camelot lavender, gets a little bit taller at closer to about 40 inches. But two beautiful varieties of foxgloves that I absolutely love and are definite grow agains for me. These are as advertised, just like the footage on the website and the pictures on the seed packet. What you grow is what you get. Now, we're not going to have all successes. Here comes the first flop, some Larkspur, and this was the misty lavender that I ordered from Johnny's. I had high hopes for this one because it was absolutely stunning. A really smoky lavender color, and I was looking forward to seeing its blooms. But it didn't germinate very well. I started it with winter sowing. I had one plant that germinated, and when I planted it out here in my Vego raised beds, it just shriveled up in the first hot day that we had before it even bloomed. So I have heard that Larkspur does like a season of cold stratification, and it usually does best when you fall sow it. So you sprinkle the seeds in your soil in fall, it goes through the winter, and it germinates in spring once the soil warms up. But I thought that winter sowing would imitate those conditions with the cold winter and that it would do fine. But 2 years in a row, I have not had luck with Larkspur. So if you could, let me know your tips for success if you have had luck growing Larkspur, because it's such a beautiful bloom and I really want to have success growing it. Here in this bed, there are a few plants that are looking really beautiful, so I want to share them with you. Now, this one here I mentioned a couple of videos back because I am just smitten with it. This is a type of hollyhock and it is called champagne. I got the seeds on bakercreek.com and it has this lovely color. It's a really pale kind of apricot that almost looks blush, maybe ivory. It's stunning. Now, I did get some singles like you can see here, but most of them are these gorgeous ruffle blooms. It stands about 3 feet in height. This one might be closer to 4 feet. It is in my raised bed, so it's giving it a little additional height. But the great thing about this variety of hollyhock is that in the couple of times that I've grown it, the foliage is really healthy and doesn't have rust like some other varieties of hollyhocks that are really prone to them. The other thing is that a lot of hollyhocks are biennial, meaning they only bloom in year 2. Well, these always bloom for me in year 1. And I started these with the winter sowing method. The bunnies do like them, so I have to grow them in here inside my fenced garden so that they don't get them. But really beautiful variety. Right here I have some celosia, and this is the terracotta variety that I grew last year. I actually collected my own seed and grew them again. So this is actually a plant that just keeps on giving, and if you want to collect your own seeds, it makes great currency so that you can exchange with other gardeners and get a different plant that you might want to try. It'll save you some money on seeds come the winter when we're all itching to buy seed again. And this beautiful Snapdragon, I am just shocked that it is August and it is still blooming. Now, snapdragons traditionally like cooler temperatures of spring, and once it gets warm in the summer, they stop producing. Well, this is the Madam Butterfly, and it's a mixed variety. So I had shades of this beautiful light pink, I had some yellow ones, and I also had a bronzy kind of rose color. They're just gorgeous. Now, earlier in the season, they were a lot fuller. Right now in the summer, I'm just getting kind of some blooms up top, but I am still happy to be getting some flowers. Now, a plant that I will not be growing again is Lisianthus. So if you recall, back in the winter, I had shared with you that I had started some seeds in my dining room, and I specifically started them early because this is one that takes a really long time to get going. The seeds take forever to germinate and the blooms take forever. Here we are in August, and I'm just starting to get blooms forming on this Lisianthus. And I had 24 seed cells and I only got about 6 plants. So a really small return on investment for time with that plant. So I won't be growing Lisianthus again. And right here is a new to me variety this year of celosia. It is called Shimmer. Now I did buy the seeds from Johnny's. It was a pack that has multiple colors. You can get shades of pink and peaches, some lime and yellows. And I was able to get some that bloomed in this really beautiful pink. And I'm going to show you the lime one as well. I really like that it has that upright kind of fuzzy texture. It looks really beautiful as a filler with my zinnias. Check this out. They're so nice and tall, which means you can get really long stems out of it, making them perfect to put in the vase with other flowers. So I really love these, and I will definitely be growing the Shimmer variety of celosia again. And now we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. This beauty right here. It is the red spike amaranth. It is an absolute showstopper. Anyone who comes into my garden is like, what is that? It is stunning. And I have grown amaranth before. Last year, or for the past couple of seasons, I've been growing Auschenberg. And let me tell you, I've been wasting my time with that variety because in my opinion, this one is far superior. This is the red spike amaranth. And I also purchased this one from Johnny's. It has an exceptional vase life. I actually cut some for my garden club garden tour last week, and it is still looking gorgeous in a vase up in my kitchen. And you can see that it puts out a bunch of side shoots, nice and sturdy, and just beautiful. Even the foliage with these dark leaves is really pretty. So this one is another definite grow again. And I actually grew this indoors, not with winter sowing, so that I could have a little more control over them. And I only ended up with about maybe 4 plants or so, but I mean, it was plenty, as you can see, because there's a lot of side shoots that come out, so you can cut on all of those. You might recall from one of my videos that I said I was giving up on dahlias this year and I was going in on the zinnias. And I actually grew several varieties. Now, I do have 2 dahlias, one that I bought from a friend to support her with a dahlia she's developing, and another one that someone gave me. But that's it. Everything else is zinnias. Now let's start at the end with a variety that is really beautiful. It's called Linen. And I was between choosing the Linen or the Ballerina variety from Johnny's. And ultimately I went with the Linen because it said that it was more ruffly and there were more double blooms. Now there isn't a ton of blooms here right now because I just cut a ton of them yesterday to make a bouquet for a friend. But I do have some B-roll footage that I'm going to insert. They are stunning. There's one right outside the fence that George might be able to show you. And this is what most of them look like. Actually, most of them are a lot bigger than that. But you can see that the color is kind of a pale blush with a hint of pink and cream. Just a really beautiful and soft colored zinnia.
So that one's true to the packet?
That one was absolutely true to what it looked like on the Johnny's website. And I'll insert footage of that. Now, one that was a flop was the Aurora. But it was actually my fault because I had started so many zinnias indoors under grow lights to have an early start on the season that I ran out of room under the lights. So I had to start some with the winter sowing method, but it was actually spring sowing. So in April, I used the container. I did a winter sowing container with zinnia seeds, and they germinated, they were growing, and then we got a heat wave at the very beginning of May this year, and they all fried. And I had gone all in and used all of my seeds in 2 separate containers, so I lost them all. But it's such a beautiful variety that I am going to grow them again. Here is another really beautiful one. This is the Oklahoma Salmon. Now, I had gone to do a garden tour at Andrew Grossman's house last summer, and he had a huge drift of these. They're a really soft salmon color, many of them very ruffly. Look at this one, so layered. And they're only about 1.5 to 2.5 inches across, but they have some serious flower power and really sturdy stems. And I find that they also last pretty long in a vase. You can definitely get a solid week out of them. So a really pretty one that would even be beautiful in a border if you added some annuals in your flower borders to fill in some gaps. I also grew some Benary's Giants. Now, Benary's Giants are one of my favorites because the blooms are giant. And I have the Benary's Wine right here, such a stunning color. And the Benary's Salmon Rose, which is another really beautiful one. One that I don't like so much is the Benary's Lime. In fact, it got swallowed up by all of these other plants that you can't really see it. But I've mostly gotten singles out of that one, and I really prefer the Benary's that are roughly and have more petals like this one here. I also grew the Benary's Mix, which you can see right here in this bed has a mixture of brighter colors. So I actually have some orange and some golden colors. This one here that looks kind of like a coral red pink, and even some shades of violet. So if you haven't grown the Benary's Giant Zinnias before, I highly recommend them. They're such a beautiful and large zinnia. They look so striking as cut flowers in arrangements and bouquets. I recently got a question from a viewer regarding this space, and I don't film it that often, but it's where I grow all of my cut flowers, a few herbs, and a couple of vegetables, and I really love it down here. And about 3 years ago, we went through the process of converting all of our rotted wood beds that were in this space to these metal raised beds by Vego Garden. And I have absolutely loved this transition. These beds are now 3 years old and holding up beautifully. So if you were ever curious about metal raised beds, that video is excellent. We go through the different beds, the style of them, as well as how to set them up. So I will link that video down below, and I always have a Vego promo code for Hooked and Rooted down below that you can use to save you money off any purchase. So let's go ahead and look at the next plant that I grew. And it was the Rudbeckia Prairie Sun, which is a beautiful Rudbeckia. It has a sunny yellow color with a really pretty green eye. And I grew it for the first time this year. And I had terrible germination. I grew it with winter sowing, and I actually only got 2 plants. And what I did was I planted them right here in my raised bed, and they're doing really well. So I have one here and one here. It is the Prairie Sun Rudbeckia. And my goal is to get it to bloom because they are a first-year blooming Rudbeckia. And if they bloom, I'm going to let them set seed, collect those seeds, and grow them again next year. Now, I may grow some with winter sowing, but I may also grow some either in my greenhouse or under grow lights just to have a little more control over the process. Because they're such a pretty flower, I want to get more of them. And this dainty little bloom here is the Cherry Caramel Phlox. It's actually really pretty. I probably should have staked it so that it would be more upright because it makes also a really dainty filler for cut flowers. But what's interesting about this variety is that it's fragrant, but from the seed packet, this is what they're supposed to look like. They're this kind of peachy, creamy color with a deep pink or purple eye. But check this out. I actually got some fuchsia blooms as well. So this must be the cherry part of the cherry caramel. So sometimes when you grow things from seed, it can be really interesting because you expect one bloom and end up with another variety as well. And a marigold. This is the Keys Orange Marigold that is an African marigold and has larger blooms than, say, the French marigolds. It's a really vibrant shade of orange. It looks really pretty paired on the side of this spike amaranth that has that deep kind of fuchsia color. And it also has that traditional marigold fragrance. Now, it is pretty tall. I would say that it's anywhere from 3 to 4 feet in height, but I really love this vibrant orange color. I think it's going to pair beautifully with some of these colors as we approach fall. I think it's going to be a really good one. And another beauty that's super easy to grow with the winter sowing method is the Southern Charm Verbascum. About 2 months ago, I had a stand of it right here in the middle of this well bed, and it was stunning. I want to say at the end of May or June, and I will insert some footage. But that was just started last year in 2025 using the winter sowing method. I planted it out in this bed that we created in the end of the summer, beginning of the fall with the no-dig method. Planted out those seedlings and they bloomed beautifully for me this year. So if you haven't tried the Southern Charm Verbascum, I highly recommend it. It does wonderful with winter sowing, and it's one of those showstopper plants. Anytime I share footage or pictures of it, people ask, what is that? So it's definitely one that gets some attention. If you've been around for a little while now, you might know that these are my beloved Sahara Raspberry Ripple zinnias, and they're stunning. They're a low-growing, bushy stature type zinnia that looks excellent either for the front of a border or in a container. And I learned recently that they grow true from seed, but that will only be the case if you have them isolated like I have them here. Now, what I mean by that is for the last several years, I've been buying my own seed, a new pack each year, because you only get about 20 to 25 seeds, and I grow all of them to fill both sides of these walls. Well, last fall, I went ahead and collected some seed and grew some plants from that seed to see if they would look the same. And they do. So the only caveat with that is if you grow zinnias along with other varieties of zinnias, there might be some cross-pollination that takes place. And in that case, you might not get the very same variety to come back for you from seed. But because I have these pretty isolated right here at the top of the driveway by themselves, they grew true from the collected seed. In fact, I have this one right here that seeded itself in the middle of the driveway and the sidewalk, and it's doing beautiful. And I have another one right here that's just starting to grow. So it's a really resilient seed. I would say if you've been growing the double Sahara Raspberry Ripple zinnia along with me, collect some seeds this fall. In fact, I'm planning on making a video on collecting seed at some point mid to end of September, and I'll be sure to share that with you. And another beauty that I've been growing for about 4 years now, maybe even 5, is the Blue Horizon ageratum. Now this one here is such a beautiful, vibrant ageratum. And the great thing about this variety is that it is taller than the shorter bedding ageratum that you typically find at the nurseries and garden centers earlier in the season. Those might only be about 6 to 8 inches in height, where this Blue Horizon ageratum is about 18 inches in height on average. And it is beautiful. You get all of these stems with this really gorgeous lavender purple color that has a hint of blue to it. It looks fabulous paired with the Dalmatian peach foxgloves that I grow every year, and I just love it. The pollinators also love it, and it blooms for a super long time, from when I plant it in late May, early June, all the way until we get our first hard frost. And these I do grow inside under my grow lights so that I have more control over the plants. And maybe this year I will try them in my greenhouse, but it's really easy to grow from seed. And Gomphrena. For those of you who have been here for a long time, you might know that I love to grow Gomphrena here in my front walkway border. And I have mostly grown the Atomic Purple variety by Baker Creek, which I love. I also tried the Snow White one year, but it was a little too light to see from the street, so I didn't like it quite as much. But this year, George actually chose this kind, and it is the Sequin variety by Johnny's. And it was a new variety of Gomphrena this year, and I thought it looked beautiful, so we went ahead and gave it a shot. Well, I have since learned why I don't like this variety quite as much as some of the other ones I've grown in the past. This Sequin variety of Gomphrena is a Hagiana type, and the ones that I've grown in the past that I really loved were globosa type. And the key difference between those is that the Hagiana type, like this one here, the Sequin, gets these singular, tall, skinny stems with a more oblong type bloom on top, where the globosa variety is more branching, more bushy, and gets more globe-sized or shaped blooms. So that is the key difference. When I originally ordered these, I was thinking Gomphrena, Gomphrena, but until they started blooming, I couldn't put my finger on why I didn't like them quite as much. They looked almost weedy to me. Well, friends, that is what I found out. So going forward, I will only be growing the globosa type of Gomphrena. And the next plant that I want to talk about is this one here, the Sahara Rudbeckia. Now it is just past its prime at this point in August, but it is a real stunner. It has all different shades of sunset colors, and originally when I grew the Sahara Rudbeckia about maybe 4 years ago now, I thought that it was just going to be an annual. It turns out that it's a half hardy annual. So if you get a mild winter, they'll return for you. However, this past winter, we had a really tough winter, really cold, freezing temperatures, and they came back. And I think what happens is that they do self-seed some, because I do have some baby plants and some foliage that will then grow into a bigger plant. So this is one that if you grow it, it very much can become sort of like a perennial where it may return for you for some years, and it will also self-seed if you leave some of these bloom heads up and to dry out and drop seed. The thing with that is that you do have to make sure you have exposed soil underneath and around the plant so that when it drops seed, it makes contact with that soil and they'll germinate. And that's how you'll continue to get more of these plants, or any plant in your garden that you want to self-seed. But the Sahara Rudbeckia is such a beauty, and one that I don't ever want to be without in my garden. So it is one that I would highly recommend and continue to grow year after year. Of all of the new varieties that I grew this year, I had two standout favorites: the linen zinnia by Johnny's, and the new variety of Foxglove that I tried, also from Johnny's, the Camelot lavender. Two stunners that I will definitely repeat next season. There was one that was quite disappointing, and that was the Gomphrena, and that was partly my fault. I grew the wrong variety for the application where I wanted to use it. So each year I love to try different things. Of course, there's always those tried and trues that I fall back on, but let me know in your garden if you tried something new this year that you really loved and how it's doing, and if you tried some things that were maybe a little disappointing. Let us know down in the comments so we can learn from each other. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and I'll catch you in the next one.